So today I am really happy that we're welcoming back Rosalys Peel. Rosalys wrote Mike and Me, which is a guide for Alzheimer's couples, families, and caregivers that won the Indie Award. It's a delightful book. It's really informative, and we're going to hear some of it today. When Rosalys' husband Mike was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, the two of them vowed to go right on living in their own home as normally as possible. And so for nearly 10 years, they found new ways to defy many of the most discouraging Alzheimer's statistics. Together, they pursued their dreams, maintained their love, enjoyed family and friends, kept Mike on his feet, and saved thousands of dollars by doing it all on their own home. Through it all, Rosalys kept a journal of their discoveries, and that's the groundbreaking guidebook called Mike and Me. And Rosalys has been featured on NPR and the Today Show, as well as on Something to Talk About. She is a registered nurse, a certified couples relationship facilitator, and remains a tireless writer and speaker, national fighter against Alzheimer's, and our neighbor here on Bainbridge Island. Thank you very much for joining us, Rosalys, again.
Okay, I guess I'm up.
You're up.
This is so fun. It's my third time, so I feel like I'm really getting to know you. And so while I haven't been watching you live, I have gone in and seen it later, what you've been watching. And so I keep thinking, is there anything else I can add? What could I say of interest? So I went back to look and see what I'd said before. And the first time around, I really talked about kind of an overview about the book and why we wrote it and was about. The second time, which was May 18th, I really talked about the pandemic and how we can do this in a pandemic and how it's different from other times when you're trying to care for somebody with Alzheimer's. And this time, as I listened to other talks, I kept thinking about sleep. And the reason I thought about sleep is I've sat in on a number of Alzheimer's conferences now virtually, and they keep kind of giving it a one-liner. Sleep is important, but there's not a lot said about it. So I was kind of curious about it and wanted to learn more about it. And then, of course, I wrote a little chapter about how it related to Mike and I during his journey. So I thought, that might be a topic of interest. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And so I set it up going with kind of 4 different sections I'm going to talk about. First, I wanted to talk about that whole subject of why sleep matters, which is the title of our topic today. And then I'm going to read a little bit from my chapter called The Magic of Proper Sleep, which brings it back to what my experience was with Mike and a little bit about Alzheimer's. The third one is what we can do to promote sleep. And the fourth one is something that almost may have looked at a teaser if you saw something that I sent to read, which has to do good news about Alzheimer's. And so last time I was here, I did talk about some good news, but then there's something else that has just come out that I want to share with you as well. So that's what I'm going to end off with, is good news about Alzheimer's. And certainly when I get to that little section about what we can do to promote sleep, hopefully people are going to jump in, because as with any presentation, having done a lot of teaching of childbirth education and other classes, straight lecture is really boring. And because I don't do slideshows and other visuals, having you interact is what makes this conversation helpful. So that's the direction I'm going to do. And I'm looking forward to some chat conversations coming through to read. So anyway, we'll start with what do we know about sleep? And I want you to know this was all kind of a learning process for me as well. But some of the things that I've learned from the Alzheimer's Association and then going online and looking at is that we, and I'm going to put myself in the category of a senior citizen, I'm 76, so I'm right up there with the same peers that I'm talking to, that we really as adults, seniors, need the same amount of sleep as a younger adult. And that comes out to be about 7 to 9 hours a night. It's interesting to go back and think about babies and what happens with babies. So babies need a lot of sleep. And they talk about the reason babies need so much sleep is they're actually building neurons in their brain. So until they're 2 years old, they're really involved in building that. So the brain is building the first 2 years. Then after that, they talk about restorative sleep. And that's what we're all doing. And with restorative sleep, we're really nurturing our brain. And they actually make the analogy that sleep is like food for our brain. We cannot live without sleep, just like we can't live without eating. So sleep is extremely important, and it's important that we do that. A couple of other little things that are interesting about seniors is as we get older, our sleep-wake cycle changes. And one of the things we know is that we have less melatonin, and melatonin is what helps regulate sleep. So that kind of answers why that cycle may change a little bit for us. There are some interesting studies, and there's a study that's out there that really needs more work on it to say that this is factual, but they certainly know in mice that when mice do not get enough sleep, they build up more beta amyloids, which is what you find in the brain with people who have Alzheimer's. So there comes the question, does sleep also, for adults, increase those amyloids, which cause tangles in the brain? And some early research is looking at it. However, it was strange not to find more information on that. So that is, it's stated as it looks like, it's not confirmed. But, you know, it's another argument for why we should sleep. We also know one of the things that happens when we sleep is we convert short-term memory to long-term memory. So something happens that day, and by sleeping, it allows us to remember it later. But if we don't get enough sleep, we have difficulty in doing that. Then when I went to my favorite site, which is what I like to go to, if I'm going to look for something medical, I like to go to the American Association of whatever, pediatrics or American Medical Association or something along that line. So when I went there, what really popped up is the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, which is abbreviated AASM, and they talk about insomnia, and they put it in two categories. They put it as transitory, meaning you sometimes have insomnia, and then there's people who always have insomnia. So the percentages are interesting. Those of us who have it just occasionally, I say us, not that I particularly have it, but in reference that we can all experience it at times. They put it in the category of 30 to 35% of everybody experiences times where they're not sleeping well. The group that have it chronically is in the category of 10%. And of people who have insomnia, more women have it than men, which is interesting. So women get a little bit more than men have it. We know that when you have insomnia, it affects how you're able to work. So if you're trying to complete a task, if you have sleep interrupted and you don't sleep well, you don't do as well with that. You have trouble with decision making. And we also know that insomnia really affects a relationship. If you're in a relationship with somebody and your partner is sleeping, you know, up and down and not sleeping well, that can affect your relationship. So that was just sort of some little factual things they give us. And of course, from there, we can bounce into a lot of things that we know about, which includes actual medical reasons, such as sleep apnea, you know, where you wake up a lot. And what we know, the solution for that is to go on a CPAP machine. And that's kind of off in a whole different direction. But if you're chronically waking up in the middle of the night, then that's one of the things that you would want to look into. And that's interesting to me because when we were first trying to figure out Mike's Alzheimer's, the very first thing the doctor went to was, what is his sleep pattern like? Well, Mike was a snorer, and Mike did wake up many times during the night. He would startle and wake up. And that's where the doctor went immediately when we were thinking he was having memory problems. So we went through the sleep studies, and sure enough, he did have sleep apnea. He did go on a CPAP machine. They never on brain imagery could see that there'd been damage, and it was not the solution for him. But interesting, that sleep pattern with, you know, memory loss was the first thing they looked at. So that's kind of a little side issue here. One of the things that the American Academy of Sleep Medicine talks about is that we should stay on standard time. They're absolutely opposed to this daylight savings time, which was really interesting. And then they talk about it a little bit. They said that there's more car accidents at that time. There's more difficulty with that time change. And they also talk about that 63% of all of us, we actually say we should get off daylight savings time. Every year it comes up with a little more push behind not making that change. And they do say, however, when we go on daylight savings time, what we should do is keep our clocks the same until just before we go to bed. So I'm somebody who's kind of fooled with that a little bit. Sometimes in the afternoon, I think, oh, I'll just move my clock ahead now. But they say don't do that. Change it just before you go to bed to switch your head over to that daylight savings time. When we talk about how do you solve sleep problems, and we'll get to that, we'll talk about that kind of where everybody can jump in with things that work for you. They go to cognitive behavior. They really talk about imagery, relaxation, focusing, yoga. And of course, I know the Senior Center has wonderful classes in that category, but using those techniques to relax and settle to go to sleep. So that's preferred. Use of medication for sleep is not very effective. I mean, it has side effects, and so it's not the first place they'd like to go with sleep disorders. But the people who do use medication, they give us a percentage of 4.1% of everybody with sleep difficulties lose sleep medication. And again, I find that fascinating in relationship to Mike, because very common for somebody with Alzheimer's to have them use medication to help them sleep at night. We didn't do that. We never did that. We got into this nice pattern of how we handle sleep. So the amount of medication he ever used for relaxation or sleep, and that also fits in the category of agitation, was very, very rare. It was never used for sleep, rarely for agitation. So I think all the other things are what can make a huge difference. Okay, maybe I will even see right now if there's any questions before I jump into the little chapter. Anything popping up, Reed?
Well, I will mention that the Washington State Legislature has actually about a year ago requested from the federal government the permission to not go to daylight saving time.
Oh, that's so
and
good.
So we're just waiting for a federal waiver. Maybe the new administration will help us out and give that to us, and maybe next year we'll stick on standard time.
That would be nice. Just for the fun of it, are people willing to do a thumbs up or thumbs down? Are you a thumbs up for getting rid of daylight savings time? Thumbs up to just stay with standard time?
Right.
Yeah, looks like quite a few people would be happy not to change the time zone. Yeah, would make our lives easier.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Interesting. All right.
Excuse me,
A comment, Karen?
Yes, was the thumbs up to, I want to get rid of it?
Yeah, let's say we want this to happen.
Yeah,
Yes.
I want to get rid of it. So
Yeah.
not the confusion. So there you
Yeah,
go.
we're in favor.
And you've experienced the discomfort and disorientation from having to switch?
Oh yeah,
Karen?
definitely. Especially when I was teaching.
Yes.
The students, I mean, it seemed like it took at least a week for them to get adjusted.
Yeah.
I mean, our pets, they don't care. It's like,
Instead of getting up at 6, they're getting up at 5, right?
That's right.
so I am, I have been wanting to get rid of this most of my life. So, and it's frustrating because the vast majority of Americans do want to get rid of it. So,
So there's something we can write our congressmen and senators to please get the federal government to abide by our request, because we've already passed it as a state. Yes, Christina?
absolutely. Yeah.
I was just wondering, you had mentioned that this legislation has been passed. Why is it that does it go through Congress, or why?
I think there's the federal government, the administration has to grant the permission. So it's like it's waiting on somebody's desk.
So it's not in some kind of a constitutional amendment where you have to.
We've done our part. I'll put a link in the mail that I send out after this. Yes, Rosalys?
Some states don't change already, like Arizona doesn't change, and there's other states that, so we're not setting an unusual precedence here. We just want to join in.
I was just saying, it seems to me like that's a great bipartisan issue. And shouldn't we start off this new administration with a great bipartisan passage of something?
Yes. Good plan. Good plan. So this little chapter that I want to just read a little tiny bit, because reading is pretty boring for an audience, but this little chapter is called The Magic of Proper Sleep. And I'm just going to read a little paragraph and then talk to you a little bit and then read the insights at the end. There's 4 little insights. So the magic of proper sleep. By carefully managing Mike's sleep pattern, we made it possible for him to function at a higher level. If Mike did not get enough sleep at night, or if we skipped his scheduled naps during the day, he became agitated and confused. Everyone knows that agitation and confusion are common symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. But I'm convinced that the simple lack of sleep may be a bigger contributor to those symptoms than people realize. To put it more positively, consider this. By carefully managing Mike's evening sleep and daily naps, I believe we minimize the usual irritability associated with his disease and improved his ability to function at a higher level for an extended time. While sleep requirements vary from person to person, I can safely guarantee that if you and your loved one figure out how to get the sleep you both need, it will make a dramatic difference in your entire Alzheimer's journey. To that end, here are some simple ways that Mike and I learned to get the required sleep for our daily challenge with Alzheimer's. So, with Alzheimer's, what we all know is skills are decreasing. So I knew about Mike's skills decreasing in walking and speech and memory. I understood that, but no one really explained to me about what would happen with sleep. So what was happening as Mike was losing those skills, his brain needed more sleep. And I have to say, I truly believe that was one of the big ahas that happened to me while I was caring for Mike. And it happened because I taught. I just retired from Swedish a year ago. But at Swedish Medical Center, I was teaching parent education classes to parents. So in the newborn care class, I was talking about babies needing sleep. And I talk about how do you get your newborn into a regular sleep pattern. And as they get older, they need less sleep. And literally, I was riding home on the ferry and thinking about Mike, how he'd always fall asleep, no matter when we went for a ride in the day. He could have had breakfast. It was 10 in the morning. He was asleep. In the afternoon, we'd have lunch and he's asleep in the chair in the living room. And I started thinking, maybe what's happening for him is he needs to bump up his sleep. So I started adding these naps, just like as a parent with a young child would to decrease nap, I was adding naps. And it made all the difference in the world. It was like this huge aha. And I've never heard anybody really talk about that in relationship to Alzheimer's. Matter of fact, when I go to care facilities, you see lots of people sleeping in chairs or in front of the TV. And yet when I worked at Bainbridge Babies on the island, the little toddlers all had lunch at noon. And by 12:30, they were all in their little beds. And we had nice music on and we'd pat their backs and we closed the curtains and everybody took a nap. And then everybody was up at 3 o'clock again. And so I just thought, that's what we need to do here. So at first we started a regular afternoon nap. That meant lunch, and it wasn't fall asleep by the TV or in a recliner. It was, time for a little rest. And actually, if I'd laid down with him, he was real ready to lay down together and I could maybe take a 5 or 10 minute nap and slip away. But pretty soon it was the routine. Curtains closed, lay down, side position, shoes off, little blanket, turn the music on, and he was out. The amazing thing to me is that by him sleeping, taking an afternoon nap, it did not interrupt the normal time to go to bed at night. He needed it. Then later, I actually added one in the morning before he got up because he would have difficulty if he couldn't function as well. But if he had breakfast in bed, had his pills that would help him get rolling, and another little nap before he got up, then we were good. We were really good, as opposed to having him get up and all the work involved in getting up. He was exhausted by the time we did that, and he needed to fall asleep in his chair. So that's kind of how we did it. It sort of gives you the overview of how we adjusted sleep. And I think it's a real learning moment, and I think it's something we should all remember if you're connected with anybody with Alzheimer's, and something we should remember for ourselves as well. And I can just relate to it, and we'll talk about things later, but in particular, I just noticed late afternoon, if I'm trying to do paying bills or something real cognitive, and it's like 4 in the afternoon, I'm yawning, and it's like, I need to go lay down. And I don't need a lot, but if I go lay down, take a 30-minute nap, then I get up, and I'll tell you, my whole evening is better. I can even have dinner, and I can pay those bills after dinner at 7 o'clock, no trouble. But 4 o'clock, my brain was done. It needed to be restored. So I think we can apply it to ourselves on a little different level. Okay, so now the next thing I want to read, I'm just going to read another little section here, and this is about caregivers need sleep too. It's often said that a patient will only do as well as his or her caregiver does. I think that's same truth. Let's see. I'm going to try that again. It's often said that a patient will only do as well as his or her caregiver does. I think there's some truth to that. If the caregiver does not get enough sleep, for example, then everything else begins to unravel, including your physical health, your ability to care for your loved one in a patient and compassionate way. So you simply must make your own sleep a priority. And if we're not caregivers right now for someone, we probably have had that experience, or we may provide that for our adult children or for others. And just be sure you take care of yourself, because you really need that sleep if you're going to give to someone else. Okay, so here comes 4 little insights. Number 1, this is right at the end of the chapter. Mike and I were sometimes short with each other, but I now think it was usually due to fatigue. Get sleep any way you can. Don't ever put it at the bottom of your list. And I had to remember that. I'd be tempted to do some housework, and I just thought, Mike's down, I need to go down. Because if I did not, I was not very nice around dinner time. I mean, he needed more, he needed help, and it was like I was really done. But if I'd given myself 30 minutes, then I was okay. I could help him, and I could be patient. 2, if you take a nap during the day, you will discover you are a better caregiver late afternoon and night. 3, studies indicate that sleep disturbances occur in about half to 3/4 of those with Alzheimer's. Once I started to think of Mike's increased need for sleep as a normal process, everything made more sense, and it certainly led to improving our dispositions. 4, many who have Alzheimer's fall asleep in front of the TV or spend hours in front of it. We chose not to do that. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends no TV time for children under 2, and then only limited time after that. I think that's a good rule of thumb for Alzheimer's couples too. Okay, so that's the chapter. And I have a little note here, because this is when I wanted to say something about Elder Wise Way, the Elder Wise Way. I don't know how many of you heard that talk, but I was so struck by it. I thought it was wonderful. I heard it online just a couple of days ago, took lots of notes. And I think what was most interesting to me is everything they said as the Elder Wise Way fits into the book. I did not have it categorized that way, but as you think about it, what they were talking about is recognizing the person for who they are, the essence of who we are as they are, treating them as an equal, use good listening skills. I think that's loud and clear in the book. And then I was really struck by that comment that she made about spirituality, getting closer to oneself, that inside you, we may not be doing the same things cognitively, but there's that deeper sense of who we are and what we're about. It's a quieter time. And I was really touched by that, because I think I felt that with Mike, that it was something he was feeling. So I just want to mention that to all of you. It's almost sort of a way of hope, of knowing what happens and what's like at the end of life. And just wanted to add that today.
Yeah, Sandy Sabersky was very informative. Both her and Ruth, they were great.
It was great. I sent them a little message on their Facebook page. I would love to touch base with them, because I think my book is just kind of an example of what they're saying about and how it works. So, okay, so let's move into some quick tips, and I'm going to give you a few that I found that come out from the American Academy of Sleep. What are they? The American Academy of Sleep Medicine. And then I'll see what you guys come up with. So a couple that they mentioned, and I don't think there's anything here earth-shattering. They mentioned be sure and have a consistent sleep schedule. The one that was a little surprising to me is they said even on the weekend. And I sometimes fudge on a weekend. I'm usually up by 8 and try and be at my computer doing something by 9. But, on the weekend, I'll kind of back that off a little bit. But they say stick with it even on the weekend. Set bedtime so you can get 7 hours sleep. So, if you have a commitment at 8 in the morning, you don't want to go to bed at midnight, because by the time you get everything done, you're having to set an alarm, so you only have 6 hours. So really set things up so you get 7 hours sleep. Don't go to bed unless sleepy. So that's a good one. You know, if you're just not tired, no point in going to bed. And they say also, if you don't fall asleep within 20 minutes, just get out of bed. You know, you don't want to hang out in your bed if you can't sleep. Just get up if you don't go to sleep within 20 minutes. You should establish a relaxing bedtime routine. And along with that, not just hanging out in bed, they actually say use your bed only for sleep and sex. So they don't want you just laying there thinking about your day or using your laptop or doing other things. It's a place to sleep or to have sex. I thought that was a nice addition. Make your bedroom a quiet, relaxing place. And I have done childbirth education, a private practice for years and years. You know, Southern California for many years, and then up here, and then hooked into Swedish Hospital as well. But in Southern California, there was a number of instructors who used their bedroom as their office space. We were all, you know, trying to figure out how we schedule people for classes. And, you know, we didn't have a lot of things going on. We had, some of us didn't even have answer machines then. We certainly didn't have cell phones. But I kind of looked at the people who had these offices in a corner of their bedroom. And even then I kind of thought, I don't think I want to take those classes into my bedroom. So mine ran out of my kitchen. I had a drawer where I could keep files next to the phone, and I had my 3x5 cards. So I scheduled the couple's information and took calls to hear about people's birth. It was all in the kitchen rather than my bedroom. So I go back and think about that. I like my bedroom as a restful place. So when I get up, I typically make the bed, throw the pretty pillows on it. Not that anybody's going to see it but me, but I like that room to look nice and be welcoming when I go into it. So I think that's a good place for me to stop and see what other people do to kind of make sleeping work better for you. Is there any pattern you've added or something that helps you sleep better? Any ideas there?
I'll start us off with the idea of thinking about when you want to get up.
Yes.
And then going back 7 hours. So one of the challenges, at least in our household, is that, you know, it gets to be about 7 o'clock and it's like, well, it's kind of quiet. There's nothing going on. I'll just take my book and read in bed. And so you're then getting into bed way too early. And so then you're going to wake up at about 1 or 2 in the morning. And that's when you're awake for 20 minutes. And that's when you should get out of bed. And I definitely have a few people that I see here at the senior center who will send me mails at 2 or 3 in the morning. So I think I know what's going on. It isn't like they aren't getting sleep, but it's like they've gone to bed too early and they're getting up, and then you have interrupted sleep. And I think you don't get that kind of pattern that you were talking about. So the idea of starting with when you want to get up, whether it's 5 o'clock or 8 o'clock, and then going back 7 hours. And then you're more likely to stay at least in a continuous cycle. I have a grandson who is 6 months old, and he's at the process right now where apparently at 11 and 1 he'll wake up and cry. And my daughter and her husband are being told those are just adjustments between sleep cycles. Wait 5 minutes. Give him 5 minutes to kind of readjust, and then if he doesn't go to sleep again in 5 minutes, then you can go in and check on him. Right. But he's really not awake, but he's not asleep. And we do that. We all of us do that at night.
Yes, it's really fun to think about babies in relationship to this, which is what I was doing a lot of. And then I switched it over to my husband and Alzheimer's. So yes. Any other thoughts?
One thing I do is that, especially this last 4 years, I had to kind of unwind my brain against the kind of nightmare of the politics. And I would watch old Seinfelds.
Yes.
Just would, you know, kind of like take me away. And then I go to bed, and my doctor said that I have to get at least 8 hours of sleep to keep my immunity going because I have a compromised immune system. And so that you're absolutely right, Rosalind. It's important that's another aspect of sleep. It does affect your immune system, lack of sleep.
Absolutely. If you're not getting enough sleep, you're more susceptible to illness. Absolutely. Right. Yeah, that's fun to mention the laughter part, because when I was here before, I talked quite a bit about that, how good that is for our brain and the releasing of endorphins. So my little routine is I watch nightly news, and then that's it. I'm done by 7. So I don't do any more of that, as tempting as it might be. And then if I don't have anything else, right now I'm watching The Crown on my
Oh, yes.
computer, which is quite pleasant. But if I don't have anything else, my standby is the Hallmark Channel. I mean, it is just a nothing, happy, pleasant show. I like Golden Girls too, by the way. But I mean, it's just nothing. And so if I can end my night with an hour of a show like that, I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
So.
Much, much better than Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am really off that. I might be doing some things on my computer after I've done the news. I might do something there, but then the last hour, I always end off with one of those couple of nice things. So, okay, so I'm going to give you a couple more. Keep your bedroom comfortable. We all know that about temperature. I actually have kind of a funny story. I have a friend, Ken Nelson, who came into my life 3 years ago, which is really nice. And you may know down there by Harbor Steps, there was a big water thing that happened because of a fire on the stove. And anyway, he lives just above that unit. So they've been cleaning out that unit. And with cleaning out the unit before, they've had these fans blowing. So it's either been super hot because his floor has no insulation, or super cold. And so his temperature has just been terrible for him down there. So it's been really funny because that temperature of the room just means you can't sleep if you've got all that heat coming up from the floor, or if you've got all that cold air coming up. So we all kind of know that, but somebody was just telling me how bad it was not to have good control of your sleeping environment. So you should have limited exposure to bright lights. And that was kind of interesting for me when I saw it. I've got some 3-way bulbs I like on in my living room, especially at this time of year. So I'm actually changing that a little bit. I can dim them a little lower as I get closer to bedtime. I don't need them up to the 3-way. I like lots of light in the morning. First thing in the morning, I like to have everything open. I like as much light as possible. And if I'm in a room that's dark, I like a 3-way bulb on. And that's good for us. We need to get ourselves started that way. But late in the day, you might want to turn that down a little bit. They say turn off electric devices at least 30 minutes before you go to bed. So all electronic stuff, that would even be your phone or your computer, just nothing 30 minutes before you go to bed. And then they mentioned don't eat a large meal before bed. Matter of fact, there's information that says our body needs time for digestion to happen. So after dinner, our body really likes to have a nice 12 hours between eating, but they just say not a large meal before bed. Regular exercise and having a healthy diet. So if you can figure out on a day like this, gosh, great day to take a walk. So even if it's as simple as a walk, just some regular exercise and a good diet is good. Avoid caffeine in the late afternoon, and don't consume alcohol before bed. Some people think a drink will help them relax. It actually does not. So don't drink alcohol or caffeine before you get close to bedtime. And then we've probably all learned this, reduce fluid intake before bedtime so you don't wake up just for a bathroom stop. So big glasses of a lot of fluids before bed will also get us up. So those are all the tips that they had. Anybody else want to say anything else? I'm looking at my time. How are we doing, Reed? How much more time do we have?
We're fine. We have 15 minutes or so. Bonnie, did you have a comment? I saw Bonnie had her microphone on, but no.
I just like seeing her down there. Nice to see you, Bonnie.
Well, I have a hard time going. Nice to see you, Rosa. I have a hard time going to sleep, so I figured out this routine. I take a melatonin, and then I read, and I read until my eyes close, like one heavy close, and then in one sort of fell swoop, I put the book down, turn the light off, get rid of the second pillow, and go down. It has to be almost instantaneous, because even if it takes 5 minutes, if it takes too long, then my eyes are open again. So
you don't want that book
it's a challenge to try to get. Yeah. Yeah.
I think whatever the routine is,
and Lawrence can sleep if I have the light.
One of the things that I've been doing is I think I've been doing this for quite a few years actually, but most likely in the last few months of the pandemic, for a routine, to establish my routine of the day, which makes it really interesting and really nice. As far as the sleeping goes, and at night, about 8 or 9 o'clock at night after I've watched Jeopardy or whatever, and I'll turn off the TV usually by then, and then I'll go and work on jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
And I'll work on that for an hour or two, depending upon where I'm at in the jigsaw puzzle. And then about 10 o'clock at night, I play this game called Brain Master or something like that, which is a trivia game. And it's all over the world, and it's sort of fun. And you're really working against yourself to the kind of thing, and against other people. And I play that one, and plus another little one that I play. And then I turn off the TV and I turn off the computer, and then I go to bed. But the one thing I do find for me in the evening, at night when I go to bed, is I need some sort of interaction. So I turn on my radio. So I have a radio going, and it's one of those kind of things that turns off automatically by itself, which is nice because I'm usually asleep within 10 or 15 minutes, but it can go for 90 minutes, which is very nice. And the only other thing that I found, and that works for me, that's my white noise, and it works beautifully. The other thing is that, except for the point is that I get pissed off because I don't get to hear all of it. That's the only bad thing about it. The other thing that I found not recently is that I was waking up at 3 o'clock, at 3 o'clock. And I would be going to bed about midnight, somewhere around in there, not to get up and go to the bathroom or anything, just to wake up. And I'd be awake sometimes for about an hour. Well, I'd get up and do something, go and read a book or turn on the computer, play a game, do something, work on the jigsaw puzzle. But until I was ready to go back to sleep again, which would be about 4. Now, that I have heard from other people is not unusual. I've heard other people say that 3 o'clock hour seems to be one that has plagued other people.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about that?
Maybe like that baby who wakes up and they wake up a little bit, and then sometimes they can get back to sleep and other times they are awake. But I love hearing what you do, because everybody figures out what's right for them. And the part that came to mind is how they say no electronic devices 30 minutes before sleep, but that's working for you, so I think everybody does what works for them. I know a number of people who they do solitaire at night, that's just kind of a mind nothing thing and helps them go to sleep. So I think as long as we can figure out our own cycle and be consistent, our routine. So anyway, that's fun to hear. Anybody else have any other comments? Yeah, we got Ann down in the corner. Her mic is off. We can't hear her.
The mute button, you need to unmute if you're going to comment, which is in the middle of the screen at the lower. You move your mouse down and there's a little thing that looks like a microphone on the left.
There we go. Right. I've got it.
Okay, Barbara. Yes.
Right. What I do is I take a very flat little, like a round makeup, cotton makeup pad, and I put a little bit of lavender oil on it at night and have it right beside my bed. And it really does seem to help. It just has a wonderful fragrance.
Yeah, lavender is supposed to be really good for that. See, there's some of those other sort of holistic things that people have discovered and that did not come up in this conversation, but that's nice. Yeah. Okay, so what I just want to add about good news, kind of getting ready to close off here, and some of these may have been from before and some may be new, but at any rate, one of the things that I heard from one of the recent Alzheimer's conferences, actually the genetic factor for Alzheimer's, it's only 1 to 2%. That's really small. So there is a group of people who may have early onset, which none of us really probably qualify for. They talk about early onset under 65. But this genetic factor, that's only 1 to 2%. So that's pretty small. And if you had that genetic factor, it's popped up all over your family. So you're pretty sure if you've got that one. The one that is really exciting that may be new to you, I've just learned about it in the last few months, is that they hope within 2 years they'll have a blood test for Alzheimer's. And that is a big deal. I mean, it took us 4 years to get any diagnosis, and it really was not an absolute then, because actually right now, to know for sure, it takes a brain biopsy. You really have to look at what's going on with the amyloids and the plaque. But they hope in 2 years to have a blood test, which what that'll mean is you go in and you have your physical with your doctor, just like you do now. They draw blood and they say, oh, you've got some high cholesterol. This is what you should do. They certainly talk about exercise and diet, but they also give you medication to help that high cholesterol. That's what they want to get to. You get a blood test done and it shows, oh, you've got some amyloids that are building up. You've got some tau up there. You've got some tangles. We need to get you on medication. So we do not have that ability to do a test and determine that now. That is pretty exciting. So people get diagnosed early and get treated early. The medications we now have help us function better. They do not stop this process. So this would be, you know, blood test and then have the right medication. So the good news that I wanted to tell you about, which doesn't turn out to be such good news after all, but the good news, when I said I had good news for you, was I had just, like the day before I said I'd be doing this talk, the CEO and president of the Alzheimer's Association sent an email out to everybody on their news thing that they send out. And it said that the FDA on November 6th had a drug that was coming before them for approval, and that drug would in fact stop the progression of the disease. That is a first that we've had a drug like that. So exciting. And it's kind of in the press. Some of you may have heard about it. So everybody was excited, and then they did not give approval. So it's back to the drawing board. They need to do more tests. They need to get larger studies. They need to do something. But it just tells us how close we are, really close, because that's a different medication than what's been out there before. So the blood test and actually having medication to stop the process is real exciting. And we're just right on the brink. So that's great. And then the last thing I'll end with is what I told you before, and we can't hear it enough because we all need to be inspired. And every time I go to an Alzheimer's conference, they tell me this and I go for a walk. So I'm going to tell all of you this as well. They have done comparison studies now with people in early diagnosis of Alzheimer's. And what they find is with the people that do certain things, they slow the progression. And there's a group in Spokane in particular that I've talked with who are doing a research group. And there's people there who've lived 16, 17, 18 years with Alzheimer's. And you look at those people, they are doing these things. And the very most important is exercise. So this is the same stuff as we know for the heart. So exercise, when you exercise, you increase blood circulation to the brain. And as they described it at the last conference, you know, even if it's a 10-minute walk, just push yourself a little bit more. Say, okay, I'm going to go for a 15-minute walk. And, you know, just gradually bump yourself up so you're doing a little bit more, breathing a little bit harder. It doesn't have to be a big treadmill. It doesn't have to be major. Just encourage yourself to do a little more exercise. That's the most significant thing we can do. After that, they talk about diet. And that's a reminder to all of us, fruits, vegetables, nuts, grains. We should be having 8 to 12 in 24 hours. I can never make it, guys, and I do try. It's kind of my little game at the end of the day to say, how did I do? If I get oatmeal with nuts and berries on it for breakfast, that helps as compared to the usual standard bacon and eggs. That's not going to do anything for me. And then if you do salad or fruit or a soup in the winter that's got some vegetables in it, you're pretty good. And then you're heading into your evening. So just kind of think at the end of the day, it's easy with our diet not to have any. Maybe you add an apple, but nothing else all day long. But if you just add a carrot stick or something else during the day, it helps. So fruits and vegetables, that's your Mediterranean diet, oils, vinegars, nuts, and that whole group of Mediterranean. Social, everybody here gets an A+. You're all into it. You're coming to groups, you're doing Zoom things, you're interacting with people. That's exactly what we need to do, especially right now in a pandemic. So social makes a difference to our brain. And then the one that you really speak to, Sheila, is this cognitive. So cognition, that's the fourth one. And that's things like the jigsaw puzzles, the games, learning a new activity. I mean, we could all take up a foreign language. It's not on my list, but cognitive. And along with the cognitive is also what we're doing here today. One of the best thing you can do for cognition is this verbal interaction, taking what I'm saying and trying to think about it and bringing it back and saying how it relates to you, and using, you know, that new knowledge and interacting with others. And especially in a pandemic, we can lose that and be isolated. So the senior center is right there, increasing your abilities. It'd be great to do a study. I think people at the senior center decrease your likelihood of Alzheimer's. I can say that because you're doing all that and you're getting new education as you go along. So there we are. There, those are the 4 from the Alzheimer's Association: exercise, diet, social, cognitive, and then I feel strongly, absolutely, we should add sleep to that. Sleep needs to be number 5, because if we don't get enough sleep, our brain doesn't get that food that it needs. So that's it, and you're going to get information about my book. I think a lot of you've already picked it up, but it is a great gift to give to people, especially during the holiday. It's very hopeful, inspirational, positive, all that stuff. Okay, that's it for me, Reed.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Rosalys Peel, Mike and Me. There's actually a website, mikeandmebook.com, and I'll send that out with the notes, and it will be in the notes for this talk, along with some other notes that we got along the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was fun. I love seeing all of you.